Hi, my name is Jamia Wilson, and I'm so excited to have you today in social studies class brought to you by my amazing publisher, Quarto. And I am here today to talk about dun, 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 Big Ideas for Young Thinkers, written by yours truly and illustrated by Andrea Pippins. And this book is about 20 questions about life and the universe. And I just wanted to say that this is a perfect conversation for social studies class because our book is all about the big questions we wanted to ask as young people, that we wanted to hear more debate about, or that we've had different evolution in our life and growth around how we think about the big questions of life as we've gotten older. And we thought it'd be a really great opportunity to talk about how you can form your own big questions, how you can hone your critical thinking skills, and how you can go deeper into your questions. I truly believe that the answers truly come from the questions. How you ask questions, how you sit with questions, how you explore questions, and how you navigate them. So I wanted to just get in a little bit about some of the questions that the book covers, and then invite you to come join us on a discovery of what you think about the questions. In the book, I say that questions are often more important than the answers, and I talk a lot about the fire of curiosity, about the hows and the whys of the world. If you are someone who's ever been told that you ask too many questions, this book is for you, and this conversation is for you. I grew up debating a lot about things around the world with adults. I always wanted to be at the adults' table to talk about politics, culture, whatever things they were ruminating about, thinking about, whatever things I could see people disagreeing on. Those were the things that I wanted to know more about, because I thought if people feel strongly about these things, then they must be important no matter what people think. So for me, I think that is the question. The question that you don't have to be a world famous philosopher like the ones that you read in books at school. And those philosophers are important, and you'll see a lot of them in my book. But what you will also see is that there's ways that we can practice being thinkers, ways we can practice being truth tellers, ways we can practice being philosophers ourselves. Because the word philosophy means a love of wisdom. So let's invite ourselves to consider what it would be like if we were to celebrate our ability to question, and having that be a great part of what it means to be human. Even if you don't sound or look like the people who you think are generally upheld as the ones who bear the torch of philosophy, are the ones who guide the wisdom of the world, your questions are just as valid as anyone else's. You are an expert of your own life and all the things that you learn and your growth, and that matters. And you can develop your skills in asking and answering questions. And that's important too, because we can learn from each other and grow as listeners by being really present with folks and being able to ask open-ended questions to learn more, rather than shutting each other down when something goes against what we immediately think is right or what we immediately know. The openness, the flexibility of being able to form good questions allows us to draw deeper connections with other people, and allows us to develop our skills in looking at the multiple sides of many issues, like a Rubik's Cube. So what I want to do now is go along and pick a topic, and I think one of the things that is one of my favorite topics in the book is to talk about human nature. This is something that I see widely debated. I've heard widely debated in classes I've been in throughout my life, and a question I have asked myself every time I hear someone say, that's just human nature. And I remember the first time a teacher said that around war, around violence, around competition, and that didn't feel right to me, and I just couldn't articulate at that time, which means to speak in a way or express in a way that completely got to the root of what I was trying to say. But there was something about this idea that what makes us human would be related to bad things, would be related to harming others. That what I really believed in my core was most integral to being human was about being good, about being collaborative, about being able to be in a team, about being able to listen, being able to follow, being able to support, being able to nurture, being able to love, being able to think for ourselves, but also coexist with others. So I wanted to understand, one, how we got to this idea that human nature is one of competition, good versus evil, and I put those in quotes. And I wanted to know a bit more to explore what it would mean to think that human nature could also be about having emotions and actions that would bring us together with other humans, that being human is about being able to connect with others and to think about a common good and to experience community in a really unique way. So in Big Ideas for Young Thinkers, I say that what makes humans distinct is our ability to reason, our ability to live together in community, and our powerful imaginations. And that is what sets us apart from some of our other primate ancestors. The debate about whether it's human nature to be good, to be bad, to be moral, or community-driven, or focused on yourself is multi-layered. It's not so simple or so basic as saying you're one or the other. That we as humans can be many things at once. We can be a both and instead of an either or. And I explore in the book thinkers like Plato, writers like Agatha Christie, actors and writers like Orson Welles, novelists like Salman Rushdie, and linguists like Noam Chomsky to get their ideas of what they believe human nature to be. So what I want you to do is to consider what your own thoughts are, what your own questions are, and what you think makes humans distinct in their nature from other animals, because that's what we are, from other animals, and what are the parts about who we are that make most sense to you, that make human nature complex or simple. Maybe your answer is that there's a simple indicator of what human nature is. I'll give you a couple of quotes from some of the thinkers in the book so that you can get a sense of how people differ. Agatha Christie believed that one always has hope for human nature. Orson Welles said that race hate isn't human nature. Race hate is the abandonment of human nature. And I love that because there have been people who throughout time have just thrown up their hands and said, well, we can't fight things like racism. We can't fight things like discrimination and prejudice and bigotry because it's just human nature for one group to want to have power and control over the other group. When many thousands and millions of years have told us otherwise. So now, I want to go and ask you, what do you think? How do you think we know what human nature is? Or is this a question that we can continue to keep up unfolding and that we know some about now, but that as the human species evolves, we'll learn more about with time? What makes sense to you? There's biological theories such as heredity that explain how our emotions and actions have connections to genes passed down by our ancestors who adapted to their environment just as we do today. But many years before these scientific facts were common knowledge, Aristotle declared that what makes humans distinct from other animals is our ability to reason, our drive to live together in communities, and our powerful imagination. He also expanded the idea that human nature is about finding meaning. I love that. What does finding meaning mean to you? He expanded the idea that human nature is about finding purpose. And that continues to be debated within many circles, both philosophical, the love of wisdom, and spiritual. And this is really grounded in the question of whether we are driven by nature or by nurture. And the nature versus nurture discussion you may have heard about before. It considers whether we are born with the characteristics of human nature or whether we are dependent on our surrounding environment to help us develop our human nature over time. Most scientists and philosophers today understand the reality to be much more complicated than just nature or just nurture. What do you think? I want to go on to one more question that I think is another important one during this time. What is truth? What do you think is true about the question I just asked you? Is truth just a static thing that stays in place, or is it something that changes over time? Is it something that evolves, expands? Are there many truths that can be held at once? Think about a time when you heard something that didn't quite add up for you. Maybe this was a moment when you encountered a friend stretching the truth with a lighthearted fib, or perhaps you unearthed an outright lie in plain sight, like when a classmate stole my jacket once and didn't give it back until we proved that the label was sewed onto the back that said Jamia. Or perhaps it might have happened in the course of debating the truth with a capital T about how our world, our science, and our species came to being. In the book, I say that it's really important to think about whether or not we are biased. And if you're breathing right now, the answer is yes. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily bad if you have bias. It just means that you've had an opinion or a feeling about something or someone without any real previous experience or knowledge. Ask yourself, what do you believe about the news, the media, politicians, people from other countries, other cultures, people who look differently from you, people who have a different way of thinking about ideas than you and your family, people in your family who might think differently from you, and then people who have a gender that differs from the one that you identify with. How much of what you know is based on evidence and reason? What opinions might you have absorbed from different people and information sources in your community and your living environment without even knowing it? It's really important to notice our reactions and those of others and how they're driven by bias so that we can interrupt harmful language and harmful thoughts and behavior when we see and hear them and course correct. In the chapter on truth, I write about the words of philosopher and free speech advocate Voltaire, who advised us to judge a man, I changed it to person, by their questions rather than their actions. And Voltaire and Socrates were separated by several centuries, and they were both saying that the question is at the heart of our pursuit of the truth. So what does it mean if those in charge try to stop us from questioning? So I want you to think about that. What does it mean to judge a person by their questions rather than their answers? Are you judging me right now by my questions or my answers? And what does that tell you about yourself? That's a good question. So now that you are thinking about questions and thinking about how they help us discover the truth, does anything feel off to you in your own thinking about a particular subject? What ideas are you ready to explore or challenge? And if you have those questions, Big Ideas for Young Thinkers has a guide for you, a guide for how you can ask those questions, how you can think through those questions, how you can debate with other people respectfully and kindly while also having healthy boundaries and standing up for yourself if need be. So just think a little bit about that and write down what the big questions you have are. What are the things that you want to think about more deeply? And then think about your questions, ponder your questions, share them with others, and let us know what you debated in your classroom. Let us know what questions you're still thinking about. And when you read the book, let us know what questions you would have added to the book that were not answered. Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you for sharing your time. It's so important that we have these conversations, and it's so important that we ask beautiful questions, because that is one of the best and most glorious parts of being human. As Frederick Douglass, the American abolitionist writer and orator, said, "The truth is not always beautiful, nor beautiful words the truth." Thank you so much.